Okay.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you giving me this time. So to start us off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Henry Herzing, founder, along with my wife, of Herzing University, which is in about 8 or 9 states and has an online division in the United States, and is recognized as a university like the University of Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Purdue, et cetera, by an accrediting commission. It's called the Regional Accrediting Commission, so we're very proud of that, about 6,500 students. And we also founded some schools in Canada. It's called Herzing College, and they're career-focused colleges in 3 provinces, with also some online, about 3,500 students. So altogether, about 10,000 students that we are at university or the college that we founded, and we have about 70,000 graduates from all those colleges. And I've got an honorary PhD for my leadership and career education, and have been voted to be the outstanding member both of a career association in the United States and in Canada, which I think makes me unique as far as I know.
Certainly does. So you have chosen some really interesting topics to discuss today, and the first of which is trust. And so my question to you is, what's the benefit from the leadership point of view of creating a work culture of trust?
I just think it's a fundamental pillar. If you don't have that, I think you have a very feeble and suspect organization that is going to have a very difficult time thriving. People need to trust one another. They need to trust their leaders when they say something, that they can believe what they're saying. They need to be told the truth. That means sometimes it's not good, but if it's the truth, they need to hear some of the tough things that are going on. We have found that, and just even in recent history, at one of our locations, where the people didn't really realize how poorly that particular location was doing. They just didn't get shared the information, and we finally had to make a change. And our key executive sat down with everyone and just explained what had been happening over the last several years and how bad the situation had been, and they were shocked. And guess what? Just by realizing and having someone tell them the truth and telling them that we need their help because we've got these problems, that situation turned around in 4 or 5 months after languishing for 4 years. So people really need that sense of trust. And I think there's a way you can build it up. And I give this example, is that when you talk to someone as a leader, and let's say they come to you with an idea, you don't just say, I'll think about it and get back to you, because that's not clear communication. And there's no clear commitment on your part, on the leader's part. So what I give as an example is they should say something like, I will get back to you by noon tomorrow, by Monday of next week, or we'll take it up at the next executive meeting, or something very definitive in time and in action. But just saying, I will think about it and I'll get back to you, leaves the person up in the air. And so, that sense of insecurity also spills over into trust, because now I don't know what's happening. If I don't know what's happening, and I expect that the person's going to get back to me tomorrow or the next day, and the person doesn't, it becomes a real problem. So the whole idea, as a leader or as a person in the organization, in particular if you're in a service situation with a student or with a customer, is to make a specific commitment if you can, or at least say when you'll respond very specifically. So there's no ambiguity. That helps build trust. And like I say, I think it's fundamental to an organization being effective.
Mm-hmm. And what other methods do you think there could be for a leader to build trust?
Rather than making ambiguous statements. Another thing, for instance, in compensation, well, do a good job, and we'll really take care of you. What does that mean? I mean, the person who hears that really is thinking something great is going to happen, as opposed to saying, well, if the company does well this year and you do well, we think we can give you a raise of this percentage, but it'll be based upon this and this and this. It's as specific as you can. You make commitments, very specific commitments, and in time and in action and in amount, so that there aren't these ambiguous communications destroy trust. So basically be very precise. Don't say vague things like I'll get back to you sometime. Give a specific time. Give a specific action. Those are things that help build trust.
Hmm. And would you agree that, as well as communication being key, that follow through on those things that you just mentioned? So if you say, I will get back to you on Monday.
Of course, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. You make the specific, and then you better do it, because then you've really lost it. But when you do it that way and you give a specific, I will get back to you by Monday at noon, and you do, you can just see the effect. I mean, people say, oh, it's almost like I can trust that person. Even though it's it's not like, the biggest promise in the world, but it is a promise. It is a commitment. And it's these little commitments, every one of them that you make little commitments, and the person who has received that commitment sees that you follow through on it. And you see from that, over time, it could be a bigger commitment, like stick with us, we're going through a rough time, but if we make it, it will work out. Then they'll believe things like that, because the little commitments you've made, you followed through on, as you said.
And what do you think about the idea that in the time of COVID-19, that the communication needs to be even more frequent and regular from leaders?
Well, it is a problem, because unless you take an effort, there won't be much communication. There isn't much communication, perhaps other than just seeing if something's going wrong, which is not what you want to have happen. Specifically, as you know, we've had a couple luncheons where we've reached out to everyone just so that we can have some communication and create an opportunity for communication, because we don't have the normal communication that happens in the non-corona-19 environment, coronavirus situation, where you can see people in the hall, you run into them in the classroom, whatever, at lunch. So we don't have those opportunities. So sometimes we have to create them to make sure that we're keeping the lines of communication open.
Mm. Yes, I totally agree. And what about the other subject that you've picked, which is also very, very interesting subject, is mutual respect. And that kind of ties in for me with communication, because now with everybody working from home, or most people working from home still, the mutual respect needs to be all the more defined, in my opinion, in terms of written communication, and of course, communication in the way we're doing on a Zoom call. What do you think about that? How do you build mutual respect if it's not there already?
Well, first of all, respect has to be a one-way street. In other words, you have to do it. You can't create respect in somebody else. All you can do is lead by example and be sure that you're showing proper respect. And I guess, an example in my early life as a manager, that one of the first PhDs we hired, I just happened to be down a corridor and saw from a distance that he was chastising his secretary so vehemently he reduced her to tears. And that was my example of negative respect, of not respecting that person as an individual and understanding how impactful and negative his communication was, that he was destroying her self-respect. He was destroying her as a person. He wasn't just correcting a little issue, which could do in a very calm and more professional way. He was destroying her as a person and reducing her to tears, which really made me understand the importance of respect. So my example of how you create respect and make sure that you're demonstrating respect is to think of it inversely from the way one would normally think of it. Normally, if you're going into your boss, a person going into his or her boss, that person will treat the boss with some respect or understand the consequences. And I say you need to think just the opposite way. When you're talking to a contemporary or you're talking to somebody who's reporting to you, you think of them as your boss. You think of them as a person that's responsible for your paycheck, responsible for your review, and that you will treat them with the appropriate amount of respect. And that will help. If people are seeing respect, hopefully they'll send it back to you. But that is my example of the way you have to think of it, because you're going into a boss, somebody who's got power over you, you're more likely to automatically, out of self-preservation, understand the amount of respect you have to show. Look at the opposite way. Think of the janitor that way, or the secretary, or the person answering the phone, or anyone at the bottom of the pyramid. And it's extremely important, because those are the people who are really doing the work of any organization. The people who are really in contact with your customers, that are serving, they're sending the material out, they're serving the customer, they're teaching the students, whatever your industry or your business is. Those are the people who are really making your organization successful.
Excellent points. Excellent points. I agree with you 100%. A lot of people say, oh, respect has to be earned, but I don't really agree with that, particularly not in the workplace. I think that everybody needs to be treated with respect, whatever. And a topic that we touched upon in the interview with Greg Sly is that about personal bias. It's human nature to like some people more than others, but you have to keep that personal bias in check, and everybody needs to be treated fairly, consistently, and as you said, with respect.
I just think I was going to add is, one of the things I've always thought is pertinent is, and I think I try to be good at it, I hope I am, is to, as I say, walk in the other person's moccasins. You be able to put yourself in that person. And so when you're talking with them, think about, if you were he or she, how would you feel if you heard this? And to think of it from that viewpoint. Is it respectful? Is it demeaning? Or is it just, corrective and helpful? So I think that's something, it takes a little bit of a mind transition, but it's extremely important, particularly in a leadership role, to be able to do that.
Yes, the old adage of saying that to treat others how you would like to be treated, but there's also just an extension that we ourselves teach in the business communications module at your college, is that you treat others how you expect they would like to be treated as well. So it's the same, it's putting yourself in their shoes, and basically having empathy. It's as simple as that. It's leading with emotional intelligence, and within that emotional intelligence is the ability to empathize and to put yourself in another person's shoes. A leader needs to do that with his followers, with his team, just as a teacher needs to do it with their students.
Exactly.
It's an excellent topic. So another topic that you chose to discuss, I was quite excited about this. I'm interested in your views. It's on self-actualization. And I'm wondering, what can a leader do to promote self-actualization in his or her managers and in his or her team members?
Well, I think it starts out at the beginning of communicating to everyone, and through your actions and your words, how their contributions, their role in the company or the service or whatever, the institution, is very important. That person wouldn't be there unless their job or their activities or what they're providing was important. So they need to understand that, and then you have to be able to demonstrate it's important. And how can you demonstrate that? You can demonstrate that, for instance, by encouraging suggestions, by encouraging observations. How can we do something better? How can we do it more efficiently? Are there new services we could offer? Throwing those ideas out to everyone, because good ideas can come from anyone, and they can come, maybe more globally about, have we ever thought about going into this activity, to, I'm processing this paperwork, and really, why are we doing it? We could do it this way. And then being receptive to it. An example sometimes of, how to do something well is to show just the opposite. And I have a brilliant example of that. Some years ago, my daughter and I were interviewing an executive from another school system. Now, this was a much larger, 90,000 students. And this was one of the top executives. And we asked him, well, why are you looking for another position? You know, it sounds like you have a good job where you are, et cetera. He said, the boss, the CEO, told me when I came in talking about something, he said, I don't pay you to think, I pay you to follow orders. Mm-hmm. I can't think of a better example of how you can destroy self-actualization. And in my mind, in a corporate sense, there may be other deeper psychological, but in corporate sense, it's that fulfillment of a person, of feeling like I can have an effect. I really want to push myself. I want to contribute. And I have that sense of fulfillment because I'm contributing. I'm not just surviving. I'm not just here to earn a living so I can pay the rent. Mm-hmm. I'm doing something. I have a mission and I'm important and I'm really making a difference. And that type of statement is just unbelievably bad in my view. And it turned out that way. That company is no longer in business. I think my example gives the dangers. So one danger is you lose some of your best talent eventually. Mm-hmm. They'll work, they'll go through the motions. It won't be that productive, but they'll go through the motions if they need a job until they find another job. So that's one thing. Second thing is eventually the company's going to fall apart. You know, you can't have a major situation, institution of any kind dependent on one person and the effectiveness of one person just giving everybody orders as to what they do. You're not going to get the best out of the people, and that person is not omniscient. You can't see everything. She can't see everything. No. It just isn't. That is not life. So you don't get the value of the people, and you just set yourself up for failure.
Very interesting points. Excellent points. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for the time you've given and for sharing these your experiences, your examples, and your insight. Thank you very much, Henry Herzing.
You're welcome. Thank you, Louise. Enjoyed it.